Right, well, good evening and welcome to the Acoustic Cafe radio show live video stream, which we do each week before the radio show starts. And during this part of the show, you can see us as well as hear us.
Never mind.
I've got Barbara and Alan, and delighted to be joined tonight by Gowan, of course, and John and Peter, which is fantastic. Lovely to see you. And we're primarily here to talk about Saltlines and the amazing success that it has been. Both Barbara and I have saw the production in Farnham Maltings a few months ago, but yes. Now it's being taken out again, and so was this ever your intention that it would be this successful, or has it been a surprise to you?
Well, yeah, it has been a surprise, really. And I think for me, the first gig, when everyone just stood up at the end, we had no idea when we were rehearsing it, quite how it would be received, because it was very different than doing a gig where someone in the band would maybe introduce a song, you do the song, end of the song, people applaud, and that's the normal sort of gig situation. Because it comprises of Ray reading between the songs, and because from the very first moment that Ray opens her mouth, reciting the words that she had written in response to the songs, as in the first day of rehearsal, as soon as I heard Ray read, I welled up. It was just absolutely beautiful. And what happens in this show is that there is an atmosphere created, and the musicians and the audience, they don't want to spoil that atmosphere that's created by normalizing it, by applauding everything, because they know that when a song finishes, Ray is going to say something else. So we had no idea quite how it would be received and whatever. So it's just happened now that after certain songs, the audience applaud. They don't after every song because it's not appropriate, and everyone sort of knows that. So it's organically grown into this just a beautiful thing. We all absolutely love it. So the first gig for me was incredible when everyone stood up at the end and they could release their appreciation of what they'd just witnessed. And that was a magic moment for me, because up until that point, we had no idea how it would be received.
And when that happened, did you get an inkling then that you were onto something much bigger than maybe you thought you were going to be onto?
Well, it's quite interesting, really. It was never put together with success in that obvious way. It was never put together like that. It was put together with an honest endeavor for creative people to create something that wasn't a normal gig. It was, you talked about Deborah before we went on air here. Yeah. You talked about Deborah. It was Deborah's idea. Becky from Folk East Festival sent her the book, and Deborah lived in Cornwall. She'd walked certain sections of the Southwest Coast Path, and her initial thought was, wouldn't it be nice to collect songs from around that salt path, Southwest Coast Path, and play venues along the route of that path. That was the initial idea, and it wasn't until we got back to France where Deborah thought, wouldn't it be fantastic if Rain or Wind maybe was interested in some sort of involvement in this idea. It was just a little seed of a thought, which only one person can have. It's the thoughts are quite interesting. So what I'm saying is that from that, everyone responded with the respect for that idea that it deserves. And you're not talking about getting a group of producers together and writers and songwriters, right, let's write a hit show or something. It was never anything like that, because there are people that are very good at that, but it was never like that. So the success of it is just absolutely lovely, because it was all done honorably and for the right reasons, which was an artistic endeavor.
Yeah. John, I know that you've been involved with Peter on a number of different projects. What's it like being part of the team on this?
Oh, it's lovely to be asked. When we were putting the Saltlines, when these ideas were being fed to us and we agreed to do them, was kind of during the lockdown period. And I joined the band in the year before COVID wrecked everything. And we just made this album that was about to be released in April 2020. And I was really chuffed to have been asked to join, because I'd worked with Peter for a bit already in a duo, playing quite different music, really, to what we play in the big band. And yeah, it's sort of that happened quite organically as well, because I just joined in on a couple of numbers at a special gig where we were both playing, and I really enjoyed being asked to do that. And then Peter gave me the phone call. I was in my garden, said, with not so many gigs in my diary at the time, and I said, I'd love to be a member of the band. That'd be brilliant. Immediately we went and worked on the material for Natural Invention, which is our first normal album. And then the Saltlines show, as I say, came up. It was not only a good idea, it was a good use of our time in that lockdown space to be able to go, okay, well, and this is a good thing about the internet, is that you can, a lot of the archives of English Folk Song Dance Society library are now digitized. And we looked for these songs, trying to find versions of the songs that we know from the path around the southwest coast. And we also found, I was also looking for songs with some relevance with the book as well, because the starting point of this was, when we agreed to do it, the first thing we had to do was read the book for a lot of us, because we hadn't. We didn't know what it was about. And so a lot of the subjects that come up in the book are very human, and folk songs are often very human. So it was quite nice looking for these human songs from these human places, and then sort of having ideas with them. And then when lockdown subsided, we then could get together and have a bit of a jam of these ideas we've been having during the isolation. And so what came first then was the music, and these ideas got worked up. And then Raina came to some of these amazing rehearsals, and so she went away with the idea of the music, and that's when Peter said she was responding to the music. And so she wrote these new words that weren't parts of the books, a bit more poetic, a bit more rhythmical sometimes. And so and I'm a bit, I've often been quite skeptical of shows with a theme to them that isn't just the music you can make. But this is an example of me being wrong, because they can be brilliant if they're allowed to be organic like that. And so everyone's song finding process was really organic, and then the way Ray was introduced to them was very organic, and the way the show then sort of came out of this. And there must have been a moment, I think, Peter, you'll agree, where we all just went, oh, that's what we've been doing. And we had no idea what we've been working towards.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I always say that the first gig was the surprise. That was, and the reaction has been the same on every other gig. And I think what's lovely is that there's a lovely feeling playing music, where you sort of disappear while you're playing it, and it's because I always say it's the music that's the star of the show and not the musicians, and that's very important to me, that ego-less playing does deliver the best music, and certainly with the music that I'm part of, I certainly don't want to play music that's part of an act. If I move while I'm playing, then it's not choreographed. It's just the way that my body is moving in response to what I'm playing, and I think that's so important to me, that I'm not part of and we call Saltlines a show, and that doesn't sit quite right with me, because a show does suggest something that I don't feel that this is. It sort of is and it isn't, and I don't have an alternative word for it. So show will suffice for the sake of interviews and whatever.
Yeah.
But that one of when you're playing, to sort of feel that you're disappearing, and that you're actually playing the music, but and this can happen on your own as a musician, but the joy of playing with other people, when you're in the midst of playing music with other people, like-minded musicians, and you hit something, because there's still quite a lot of, although we play the songs, there's a lot of freedom within those songs, in the solos, and you're not saying, oh, it's just those so many bars and so many bars. Yes, we do have an arrangement, but the same as with John and I and our duo, and the same as the Gig Spanner trio, and the same as the Gig Spanner big band, no one has an excuse not to play their best in these bands, and also they can explore the possibilities spontaneously.
When we I was just going to ask about the audience, because when we went to see the show in Farnham, it was very obvious to me that part of the audience was there because they were to see you playing and hear your music, and they knew you well. And part of the audience were there because they knew the book, and they knew Rainer's writing. And what intrigued me is, do you think that sort of dynamic has brought about a new sort of wave of interest in your music, and vice versa, a wave of interest in the book? I know I certainly went away thinking, oh, I'd like to find out more about that book.
Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And we can't Rainer Wynne is incredible as a woman, and I can't separate Ray with absolutely wonderful human beings, and we love being with them. And we talk now about this being a family. There's a lot of love between us and a lot of respect. There is no doubt that Ray's story and her success is a huge draw for the Saltlines. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure people come along. Some people are for the Gig Spanner big band, and some people for Ray. What that ratio is exactly, I don't know. But there's no doubt that Ray's involvement is a huge part the success of this. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but you know, yeah. So you're absolutely spot on with that, with your observation there.
I think it's a great thing to happen. It was like cross-pollinating between areas that have some similarity, but not, you know, there's a lot of people that wouldn't have happened upon just a straight gig spanner big band project.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But they probably will in future because you know. Yeah. Gowan, you got a question for Peter or John?
Yep, I've been saving this up, and as Tony and Lainey aren't around, it means they're not going to trump me, which is what normally happens. Okay, Peter, without reference to the Wombles, do you have any... you can guess what's coming up next. Do you have any memories of working with Mike Batt on the All Around My Hat and Rocket Cottage albums?
Yes, I do. And what was lovely was Mike was producing one of our albums, and it was the end of the session, and Mike said, "Look," he said, "I'm a bit embarrassed to ask you this." He said, "But I've got one of the Wombles tracks as, you know, Top of the Pops." He said, "And all my Wombles are in America on tour." He said, "We've got the outfit." He said, "We've got the outfits." He said, "Does anyone fancy being a Womble on Top of the Pops?" You know, I mean, how can you not? I mean, it's it was lovely. So we put these very smelly costumes on because Mike said when they're actually on tour, because they're hot. The Wombles outfits are really, really hot. So it's underpants and that's it. And then you get in there. But Mike was telling me when they were on tour, they got so smelly, these costumes, that they had to have a separate room for them. And the people that were wearing them would brace themselves and then go into the room and put the costumes on to go out in the street and greet all the little girls, you know, "Hi, Uncle Bulgaria," you know, all that. And what was interesting, Mike came to a gig recently, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and you know, quite a long hug because we shared some quite good experiences. He produced a couple of albums we did, and he said to me, he said, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "Do people ask you about being a Womble on Top of the Pops in interviews?" This is the perfect time to tell you this.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yes, they do." And he said, "Does it piss you off?" He said, "Does it piss you off that people ask you about that?" And I said, "Well, funny enough, in the beginning, it sort of did. Because I'd go along to an interview, you know, so when I lived in Hastings, get on a train, go along to BBC. I'm quite a serious musician when it comes to music and all that. But now it's great that I was a Womble on Top of the Pops, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad you asked. And just to finish this thought process, Mike said to me, you know, because you can be a serious musician and have a laugh as well. You know what I mean? And I think Mike called it something like, you know, cloak and frown musicians, you know, where it's all like, I'm just a serious musician and nothing else. You can be both. So is it Gowan, your name? Is that how you pronounce it?
Gowan.
Gowan. Thank you for asking. It was the highlight of my career, being a Womble.
Brilliant.
I've been a long-term Mike Batt fan. He's been my musical hero for just over half a century, and I play him every show. I have 2 shows on Hayes FM, and I play him every time. And most of the time, you'll never notice because he's had such a huge variety of acts he's worked with, orchestras, singers, etc., etc., and his own albums, an enormous variety of music. And you play Robert Meadmore, a opera singer, on an album produced by Mike Batt. You never know, but yeah, fantastic artist.
Oh no, he's incredible, and the songs some of the Womble songs that he wrote were absolutely incredible. And Bright Eyes, some Railway Hotel. Do you ever play that? Beautiful track.
I do. It was also
beautiful
recorded.
Track. No, he's an incredible songwriter.
Railway Hotel was also recorded by Andy Williams, who was another of my favourites. But I mean, on today's show, I played the myths and legends of King Merton Womble and his journey to the centre of the earth, which was, of course, inspired by 2 of the Rick Wakeman albums. And it has an orchestra, it has choirs, and it's played completely straight and is absolutely glorious. Anyway, John, I won't ask if you want to be a Womble.
I missed the boat with that one. I auditioned for the Teletubbies, but I didn't get
it. Do you have any ambitions of people that you'd like to work with?
Oh, you know what? I've always, early on in my, being a musician for me came as a surprise, as a career, and so I never thought I'd ever be playing with anyone at all when I started out, and I used to sort of early on think, well, maybe I'd end up in some project with some of my musical heroes, but the fact of the matter is, I don't think there's any point in having these hopes of a particular meeting, because life just hooks you up with random people when you put yourself in that position of saying, right, I'm a professional musician, I'm going to move on this circuit, and I've enjoyed working with everyone I've ended up working with, so I don't think it would have mattered. Is that a cop out? I don't know.
It's nice.
Yeah, any of my heroes musically don't tend to be from the folk world in terms of what I listen to. The people behind Steely Dan, people like that are my musical heroes. I've got a very eclectic taste in music I listen to, and I like people that get very creative with harmony and chords, and so really great chord sequences is something I absolutely love, which is a bit lame given that I play an instrument that's got a very limited number of chords you can play in the squeeze spot, the melodeon. But maybe they're connected in some way. But no, I mean, see, before the opportunity of playing with Peter presented itself, I don't think I had any ambition to play with Peter. I knew his music in Steel Eye Span, and I'd seen Gig Spanner several times, the Gig Spanner trio, since it started coming onto the scene. I think Bristol Folk Festival was the first time I saw a full set that we were playing on the same bill, and but immediately we sort of started playing together. I knew this was something that I wanted, but you don't know until you get there. You can't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go into Barbara now. Barbara, you got any?
Yes. I've just been completely entranced, like undoubtedly your audiences are when they come along to see the Saltlines production. My question really is about the southwest of England and how much you feel the geography of the Southwest contributed to the creativity that came together in the show.
Well, I'll just throw something very obviously a huge effect, because it's all linked together, isn't it? I mean, thinking of Ray and Moth walking that path because of the circumstances that they found themselves in, it is. I got asked, I think, as an associate.
Oh.
If it just went off then, my screen, but that's all
yeah,
right.
you've just.
It said if you had to sum up the Southwest Coast Path in one word, what would it be? And they'd asked lots of people this, and my response was wow, because there's sections where you just stand there and just look, and it's such an incredible feeling, and there's like a power and an innocence and just a love of nature, and it's going to be there. Whatever we do, it's going to be there. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, the world will survive even if we don't. You know, there's a very powerful thing. So I'm sure that between us all, and particularly Ray, with what she'd written in response to the songs for the Saltlines production, as you called it, and I think I might have to adopt that instead of.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So thank you. So thank you for that. Particularly with Ray's words, which, as I said, when I first heard her speak at the first rehearsal, I just welled up, because I knew that I was experiencing something that was just so beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
Just so beautiful in a very honest way. So I'm sure the path had a huge effect.
Yeah, I think the audience respond to the production with all those feelings as well: the power, the vulnerability, the poignancy of the experience that is participating, you know, as an audience member in the production is just palpable, I think, for everybody, and I think that contributes to the reaction that the show
That's right.
elicits. And you know, I've always been had the feeling that when you create something from collaborative working together with other creative people, that that experience with the audience on that first night and subsequent nights is really important to how the production then goes on to become you know, a legendary production, dare I say it, because of the collective experience that everybody has in the venues.
Well, that's right,
Yeah,
and I think that, you know,
that's the word you use.
I think Ray.
Experience, isn't it? It's not a show; it's an experience that people are coming to.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when you talked about the effect of that Southwest Coast Path on how we are all, audience and band alike, you know, what the effect of that is, I think you can't not feel humbled by this, you know, what we've put together, really. I mean, it wasn't like that when we were working on it, because when you're working on something, you're working, you know, and as I say, we didn't really know quite what we were working on. You know, it was all like this. And I have to say that Deborah and Ray and Hannah Martin worked very hard on putting this together in the order that it's now in. And they were the best people to do that. You know, without us sitting there saying, "Oh, I don't know," they were very capable of doing that, and that was incredible. But I think we all feel humbled by what's happened, and I think the audience feel a bit humbled too. You know, with something so powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
Which does stem from the power of that Southwest Coast Path.
Yes.
You know, it's incredible.
Yeah. The bit that Ray does at the end of the first half is just that is just pure visceral poetry, embodying the sort of hugeness of the landscape and the boundary, the kind of boundary between this sort of lovely landscape and this eroding, crashing sea. And it was very difficult in the rehearsals and leading up to the first performance to play. Enjoyable as well, but difficult because it's quite draining because we're responding musically to those words, and every little bit of music we're making is different every night, slightly. Obviously, it can't be completely, but we're sort of doing sound effects almost at that point and swelling like the sea. And I don't think I'd ever been asked to do anything quite so specific musically before. And as soon as we were in that position of hearing those words, knowing it was coming to the end of the half, it was obvious what we had to do. And it was just, how can you do it the best? How can you feel it the best? And it's like we said about disappearing with the music, you've almost got to zone out of the technicalities of playing and just latch on to, well, I'm just listening to Ray's words and watching her when I'm playing that part, because she's where the cues all are, you know, all the energy coming from her is what we're feeding on. And that's quite unique. I can't think I've ever done anything musically that's that intense.
Well, and it's one of those things that when you know the story and you know, coming from a really negative or adverse position for this to be achieved out of that, it's about what life is all about. That no matter how bad things seem, something good and something splendid, and you can learn something from it. I think that's what the Saltlines is about, that journey that is taken to get where you are now.
Yeah, it's nice to have a break from life, isn't it? When I talk.
Oh, we're losing.
We're losing.
The line.
Saltlines is coming to Basingstoke. Saltlines is going on tour again very shortly. Coming to Basingstoke on the 29th of May. And so I would strongly recommend people go along to see it. It's at the Haymarket in the Anvil in Basingstoke.
If you've been lucky enough to see it already, I would still say go and see it again. It's just remarkable, absolutely entrancing, and powerful, and a wonderful night out. So do definitely go and see it again.
So I'm going to say thanks very much to Peter and John for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
I'm just going to end the stream there.